Caitlin. I'm Chef Catherine, and welcome to Cafe 260. I'm here today to make pork chops a couple different ways. I know Mom made them for you, or you or Mom made them the other night, and maybe you didn't like the way they came out. So this is how I do it, sweetie. And like I said, I'm going to do 3 different ways. First thing, put your oven on to 350, because later, once we've done some prep work with the pork chops, we're going to finish them in the oven. Now, we need to get the pans ready. I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil in each pan, because I'm doing these pork chops 2 different ways. That's why I'm using 2 different pans, just to show you. A little bit of olive oil in each pan. And in this small pan, I'm just going to put a little bit of butter, because this is going to be, this pork chop is going to have some breadcrumbs on it. So I just want a little bit of butter there. Now the olive oil gives the dish, you're able to cook at a high heat with the olive oil and not burn your food. And then the butter gives it a little flavor. So we'll just get those pans going. Now, the first, I like to take the pork chops out so they can come up to room temperature. I don't like to cook them right from the refrigerator onto the pans. And I've done this for years before I even watched the cooking shows, and they teach you the same thing. I think it cooks more evenly if you do it that way. Now for the first pork chop, all I do with a lot of meats that I prepare, I just pan sear them on top of the stove and then finish them in the oven. So just for this one, just a little bit, and I don't like to put my fingers, as you probably know, right into there. I put them in here. Because you don't want to be touching the meat and then going back in there. So that's just kosher salt, a little bit of pepper if you like pepper, and I just put a little bit of garlic powder too. This is what the chefs use. A lot of chefs just use these 3 things: salt, pepper, garlic powder. Now this other pork chop is the one we're going to put breadcrumbs on. There is a chef on television that I watch, and when she prepares chicken breasts that she breads, she puts the chicken breasts in eggs first to kind of tenderize them. Now I've never done this before, but I figured let me just try it now tonight, for you, and see. Now you have to wait till your pans are really hot before you do anything. So it's going to take a couple minutes for that to happen. So now I like to use panko, because it really gives I don't know if you know about panko, honey. It's a Japanese breadcrumb, and it's really kind of crispy, so it gives a good crust to anything that you want to fry. Just fry lightly. And this is seasoned panko, so it has a little bit of seasoning in it. You may not be able to use this depending on your allergies, sweetie. And I'm going to add just a little bit of Parmesan cheese here, because I think that'll give it a nice flavor. And I know with your gluten allergy, I'm not really sure what kind of breadcrumbs you use, but they may have kind of panko style breadcrumbs now. Now a lot of chefs would add maybe a little bit more seasoning in here, like salt, but with the Parmesan, Parmesan is very salty already anyway, so we may need a little bit more breadcrumbs in there. And I didn't add too much Parmesan because you don't want it to burn either. All right. Now see how the butter's kind of breaking down, and it's getting nice and hot, because you want your pans really hot. Now see how now the olive oil is really, going all over the pan, really freely, not like it was before, one clump. And in a minute, it's kind of almost starting, so you can almost see it kind of shimmer a little bit, like it's starting to And you can even hear it a little bit. Okay, because you want it hot, because you want it to brown nice. Ah, perfect. So now I'm just going to season the other side with a little bit more salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And the pork chops I'm using, sweetie, are center cut and they have bone in. And using the bone, whoopsie, ooh, this got a little bit too brown. That's all right. So we're just gonna dip the pork chop on both sides. All right, get that right in the pan too. There we go. Wash my hands there. Now the bone-in pork chops are going to give you a little bit more flavor, and you notice there is fat around there, which you don't have to eat after it's finished cooking, but it will impart some flavor into the meat. So we're just going to I just put these little screens on so I don't get grease all over the place. I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. And just let that brown. And I'm going to show you, these are center cut pork chops. I just want to show you this little bit there. That's tenderloin, pork tenderloin, which is really very tender. Now in the meantime, I'll get rid of this. Now this egg, you can't do anything with this, honey, because it's got the raw pork juices on it. So you have to let you guys throw that away. Now, in the meantime, I'll get all this stuff away. I'm just going to cut up an onion for myself, because when we take this pork chop out, when that pork chop's done, there's going to be nice good bits of flavor in there. They call it fond, F-O-N-D. So by cutting up an onion and adding it to that, you can get a lot of good flavor. I don't know if you like onion, but when you do that, add the onion to that and cook it with the pork in the oven. Then you can add that onion to like your rice or some vegetables, and it kind of gives it a little bit of flavor. Now I cut the onion from the root end to the top. And this is a big onion. It's really got thick skin here, so you kind of got to get the skin off. It's a lot easier to cut it if this is off, of course. And now the chefs have a fancy way of cutting an onion, but I'm going to show you the way I like to do it safely. So you put the onion with the root on the bottom, and then just take a knife and just make some slits down, not all the way through. Just be careful. And now put it on its side, and now cut this way. See, I've got my hands this way, holding it tight. Just be careful. And get rid of that little. And now you can, like a little dices, you can go this way. Still holding it tight. I'm holding it tight this way. And see how there's nice little dices there. I may not add all of this onion because it's just one pork chop, but and this knife that I'm using is called a there we go. The timer's going off here. So the oven's ready for us. Okay, see that's nice and brown. See that? That looks good. Alright, let's see how this one turned out. And this is the first time I've done this, so that's a little too done, but that's okay. I'll just turn the flame down. It's still going to taste good. Alrighty. So now when we come back, we'll just take a little break. When we come back, we'll be ready to put everything in the oven. Alright, Caitlin, it's been another 3 minutes. So, look at how nice and brown that got on the other side. Now, see how this pork chop's kind of curled a little bit? Sometimes pork chops with the fat around them do that. So what you can do to avoid that is before you cook them, just take a kitchen scissor and you can cut like two little slices through the fat so that doesn't it cooks a little bit flatter. So now I'm just going to put the onions, like I said, in here. I may not put all these onions in here. Now if you had 2 or 3 pork chops in the pan, you'd get a lot more flavor in the bottom of the pan, but I'm only using the 1 pork chop tonight. And it's just gonna, it just starts to pick up all that, see how the onions are already picking up all that good flavor in the bottom of the pan from the pork chop. And like I said, you can add this to rice, to noodles, to some veggies, and it'll kind of give you a little some good flavor, sweetie. If you like that sort of thing. I think you're going to need to... Ooh, it smells so good in here with that onion. Ooh, too bad we don't have smell-o-vision, whatever they call it. Alright. I don't really actually even have this on the flame, sweetie. I just wanted to get all those good bits. Now, like I said, we're going to finish this in the oven. So I'm just going to transfer this little guy over here. Alright, this is not hot. So I'm just going to put this in the oven for maybe, we did it 3 minutes on each side, so maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. Because pork does not have to be cooked as long as it used to. When your mom and I were growing up, you had to cook pork for hours. But the way the pigs are raised now, you don't have to cook them so long. You can almost have pork now almost pink, where years ago it had to be white and dried out and nasty. Now the third preparation that I just want to tell you about, sweetie. I know you don't like stew. But this morning, what I did was I browned the pork chop like I did, the plain pork chop, both sides. I took it out of the pan, I put the onion in, I've got all those flavors up from the pork chop. Now, there were 2 pork chops, so there's a lot of good flavor there. I put a couple of carrots in the bottom of this slow cooker. It's a crock pot, a slow cooker. I know you can't have carrots. I put carrots, the onions that I made in the pan, put those in, the 2 pork chops that I browned on top, and then I had a little leftover chicken and rice soup, and I just poured in there a little ketchup on top of the pork chops and a little barbecue sauce. Put the lid on and slow cooked it like for 5 hours, and they came out pork. I should show you the. Terry had the pork chop. I should show. I don't know where the pork chop. There was no meat on the bone of the pork chop, honey. It was so tender and good. And being that the pork chops were sitting on top of everything, it didn't get in like stew would and get like that. But it was really, really pork tender, sweetie. All right, so why don't we take another break, and in a couple of minutes, another minute or 2, the pork chops should be done, and that's it. All right, Caitlin, the pork chops have been in the oven about 3 or 4 minutes, and now what you want to do, and see, look at how that poor little pork chop. I mean, see all these good juices here flavoring the onions. That really is. That's yum there. So let's just turn off the oven. So now what you want to do is let the meat rest. It's important to let the meat rest. I'm just going to put a little bit of, now look at how that breaded pork chop, I mean, it's maybe a little teensy tiny, but it's going to be so tender inside. You need to let the any meat rest so that the juices can go back into the meat, so it won't be dry. So just put a little piece of tin foil over there, just for another couple of minutes. You know, pork chops like this, maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. Now, what I probably, well, this looks still so good. I probably would even just, now this is hot, so you got to be careful when you take this out of the oven, sweetie. I may just, and you even could put like a little chicken broth in there. You could probably almost make a little gravy with, like this. Oh, those onions look so good, sweetheart. Look at them. I don't know if you like onions. Yeah, so like I said, add that to rice or